This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. And we have a very interesting program for you today. We have a dear, longtime friend. Kim and I have watched him grow up. And we're going to be talking about what it's really like to be part of the Trump family and business. So Kim and I have had the sincere, I don't know what you call it. It was an honor for about 8 years to work behind the scenes with, of course, Donald, the company, Rona, Meredith, Keith, Norma, and then to really get to know them as people. And the two sons, Don Jr. and Eric, and I were politically incorrect. We do things that we're never going to say we do. But I've got to know these guys. You know, we spent a lot of time on this deserted island in the Hawaiian island chain. And it is, in my opinion, the most beautiful beaches on earth. Only one problem: no water, no toilets, no hotels. And so we couldn't have gotten, so Don and Eric and we could not have gotten as far away from New York City as possible and to live in paradise without the facilities. So you get to know the family very, very, very well. And it really pisses me off to see them under attack by the opponents. Any comments, Kim?
I'm thrilled to have Eric Trump on the show, and it's been quite a while since Eric and I have spoken. And people ask me about Donald Trump and what word do I use to describe him. And the word actually that comes to mind is respectful. As I've known Donald, he treated people in his company. He treats people, strangers that he doesn't know. When we've done seminars together, when Robert and Donald were talking together, he would be of the utmost respect of people with their questions, and he was very generous with his information. And that then meeting Don Jr. and Eric and Ivanka a little bit, boy, what a strong, solid, wonderful family. So it's wonderful to reconnect with Eric, and I can't wait to find out all that's going on since all the elections. And just know, Eric, you've got our full support in this battle.
So
it's so nice to meet you guys. Well, thank you.
So one last thing, as this is personal for me, is that my dad, poor dad, he was a political animal. He liked politics. The trouble was he was a Democrat in Hawaii. And when he saw the corruption of the Democrats, not that Republicans weren't corrupt, but once he saw the corruption, because he was part of the governor of Hawaii's staff, when he saw the corruption and crime, my father switched sides. So he went from Democrat to Republican, and he ran for lieutenant governor. And let's say the election was in November. 3 months later, my mother died. And the reason she died is that battle, politics, is the nastiest game I've ever seen. And my mother couldn't take it because when she shifted from Democrat to Republican, her best friends wouldn't talk to her anymore. And so a few months later, she was dead. I went home for Christmas leave. I was in flight school in Florida. So I saw her at Christmas, and she was dead a few days later. So when I watched Don and Ivanka and Eric and their dad and Melania on stage, I think of the family. So really with that, I'd like to just have insights on what it's like to be a Trump. You know, Kim and I speak from 8 years of experience of working with him, and I would agree 100% with Kim, the most respectful people I've ever done business with. So welcome to the program, my friend, Eric Trump.
Welcome, Eric.
Well, hey, guys. Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Robert. And you two are two people I love to death. You know this. I don't need to tell you this, and I have so much respect for you. And it's kind of funny. We came into our friendships maybe a little bit later, but I remember reading Rich Dad Poor Dad cover to cover. Actually, when I was at Georgetown, coming out of Georgetown, and the parallels of that book in a certain crazy way to my own life. And I know you're probably rolling your eyes right now as I say that. Were almost profound, and it moved me the way many books have been moved me. And on one side I had, Donald Trump, right? He was a billionaire real estate developer in New York. At the same time, I had my mother's family, and they were from communist Czechoslovakia at the time. And I was, Donnie Walk and I would go over there for a month or two of summers, and my parents really believed in this, and they wanted to get us the hell out of New York City, away from people, and they wanted to get us in a kind of a different world and a different environment, an environment that didn't pamper kids, an environment where you didn't have 16-year-old kids, wealthy kids driving around in Lamborghinis and being spoiled rotten, and where you had people who worked incredibly hard from a very young age, and there was no nonsense and there was no BS. And so in many ways, I kind of parallel the two families, Robert, that you did so good at talking about. In a way, we kind of understood the very blue-collar lifestyle that my grandparents lived in again, a communist country where you didn't have the luxuries that, you had in the United States of America. You didn't even have close to the luxuries that you had in the United States of America. At the same time, we come back to America and we'd see kind of a, totally different world. And you've always done such kind of a great job telling that story. And, maybe now, and I know you've told me about your father before, but, we also have that parallel where I guess, our fathers, went into politics and, did well in politics, and you also see the nastiness of that world. And I can tell you that certainly is a nasty world. But, in life, whether it's business, certainly in business, you've got to fight for the things you believe in. You've got to fight for those that you believe in, and you've always got to do the right things. And, the world can be a nasty place, and it can be a nasty place in business and in life and in politics. And, you've got to always have an iron shield up, and, you've got to be immensely loyal to the people who are loyal to you, and you've got to fight for the things that are right and just and true and righteous. And, I feel like we do that every day.
Well, that's really what we wanted to talk about is you standing up. But also I'd like to ask Kim to share what it was like. Is your role model you love was Norma, and then you met Rona and Meredith, and so we got to meet the family plus the business. They're the same, right, Kim?
They were exactly the same. And it's funny, just very quickly, both Robert and I read the book Art of the Deal. That was like our inspiration. This was before we were investing in real estate. Robert had done some investing before that, but we read Art of the Deal. We went to New York City. We went to Woman's Rink where Donald Trump had resurrected it. And when we went to New York, and Robert said, I'm really, someday I'd really like to meet Donald. Or no, it was when we were actually walking to do the book deal with Donald. And Robert said, I'm looking forward to meeting Donald Trump. And I said, I want to meet Norma. And Norma was Donald's right-hand person, right, Eric? Been with the family for many, many years. And just seemed to be such a powerhouse and such a confident, incredibly brilliant woman. Yeah, and I did meet her, and she was all of those things. It just go ahead.
So Norma was my father's assistant for 30 years, and she was an amazing woman. She passed away 3 years ago, and I mean she was just unbelievable. I mean she was tough and elegant and glamorous, all at the same. I mean, it was kind of this unique personality that you just don't see all the time. I mean, she would never say a bad word. She would never get pushed around. She did everything with grace and elegance and smarts. And I mean, she was just an amazing woman. She was she was almost a second mom in a certain way to me. And, my father, and I've told this story, I think, with both of you before, but my father, the one thing that he insisted on is that we worked from a very young age. And, so I worked on construction sites. I worked, with the plumbers and electricians and HVAC guys. And, I was running backhoes and chainsaws and everything at a very young age. He put us on construction sites and he made us work with tile and, just about every trade you could possibly imagine. And, I was 11, 12 years old, and, sometimes I'd go to her first. I'd go to, Norma first and try and negotiate and by the way, this was like below minimum wage at the time, right? I mean, my father's, theory was always, if you're a young kid, you work hard, you learn the value of a dollar. You get paid minimum wage or below, and you learn a skill set, and by 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you're exhausted, so you can't get into trouble in other ways, and you fall asleep early, and that's what you do it again. And it's really kind of instilled so much of kind of who I am today. But I'd often go try and negotiate my $4.25 or whatever it was with Norma. And at one day I finally said, you know what, honestly, I'm just gonna go right to the source, because you're probably tougher than he is. But she's an amazing woman, and we have those across the company. I mean, it's the only thing, we love doing The Apprentice, guys, but it's the only thing that The Apprentice did negatively. For all the positives and as much fun as it was and as successful as it was, we ran it for almost 15 seasons. It was the #1 show. But everybody literally would come up to me, wow, you guys are crazy. You fire people all the time. And I'm literally laughing. And you guys would laugh if you heard that comment, because if you look across our organization, I mean, I'm looking at somebody right outside my office as we speak who's been with us for 25 years. And they're just a person who happens to be literally in the hallway right now that I'm looking at. But you look across our company, and everybody's been here for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, 40 years in many cases. I mean, these aren't numbers. They're lifers. And I always say if somebody makes it past the first year, they'll be with us. For a lifetime, and we treat them like family, and they are family, and we would do anything for them, and they would do anything for us, and we just don't have turnover. And I think it speaks a lot to the family. I think it speaks a lot to how we treat people, and I think, frankly, it's probably the #1 aspect to the success of our company over those years. It's kind of the continuity of just incredible people all fighting for the same cause and objectives.
It was extremely kind and respectful. Like, Kim, what was your experience? So Norma was replaced by Rona, and then we met Meredith, who was Donald's PR person. That was like, we're the best of friends, right? I mean, it was just the best relationship.
Yeah, and Meredith is with us today, and Rona is with us today, and those people haven't changed, and here we are, through 4 years of craziness and campaigns and this and that, and they're still with the company right now, and it's we are truly blessed. And I can tell you, in the hospitality industry, is an interesting industry, because a lot of people move around, and people will go to a hotel for a year or two, and then they'll move to another hotel, and they'll move to another hotel, right? I mean, there's 10-year typically in the hospitality industry isn't that long. And if you look across our properties, you look at our general managers, I mean, every single one of them have been, we have an unbelievable building. You both know it. You've stayed there before in Las Vegas. It's 1,282 rooms right on the strip in Las Vegas. It's an unbelievable building, unbelievable hotel. And our general manager, Brian, he used to literally drive us to school. He started off as a driver in the company, and he was one of these guys, and it's actually a great life lesson. And I tell this story a lot, but he always had his hand up, boss, is there anything I can do for you? And so when we started building Las Vegas, Brian, do you mind taking a couple architects out there, showing them the site, showing them around? And he did that, and he came back. Boss, is there anything else I can do? Well, we need a couple bankers to see the site. Will you bring that out there? No problem. So, a couple months later, Brian, do you mind going out to Las Vegas and lining up some contractors? Here are the guys I want you to talk to. Go out there. Sure enough, Brian soon enough was running, construction, and built the building on time and on schedule, and was the first person to work in the morning, was the last person to leave, had great personal skills. Everybody loved him. He could motivate people. He always got things done. He was super reliable. He never let you down. And so sure enough, when we opened the building, we won't tell you which hotel company, but we brought in a general manager from one of these fancy hotel companies, and the person comes in with a 3-piece suit and the pocket squares, and the person would come in at 10 o'clock in the morning and leave at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And after a couple months, we realized this whole thing wasn't going to work out, and so guess what? Brian had his hand up again, and he's like, listen, I know nothing about running hotels, but I'll figure it out, and I'm going to do a damn good job. And 12 years later, Brian's running that same hotel, and it's one of the most successful and profitable hotels in Las Vegas. And those are the type of people that we surround ourselves with, guys. They're unbelievable people, and it's not about the Ivy League education. It's not about the it's people who care and will fight and who are loyal and always have their hand up and always get results. That's what my father has always cared about. And frankly, and I don't want to bring politics in, but he's the same to this day. I mean, loyalty is really everything, and results are really everything, and it doesn't matter who you are or what you do. If you work harder, if you're smarter, if you're more motivated, those are the people that ultimately succeed in life.
So Eric, to that point, that you're in the hospitality business, and I know our listeners would love to hear how you look at business today, given the whole craziness that's going on. What do you see? How do you think? What are you looking towards in terms of business?
Well, 2019 was probably the best year in the history of the company. I mean, we just had an unbelievable year. The hotels are killing it, and I think we do hospitality better than anybody. You have so many management companies out there, and that's what they do. They just manage, right? They don't own assets, and they sit there and they take 2% of gross, and they manage a little hotel, and they don't care. They care about operating to their brand standards, and they don't actually care about bottom line. And it's actually really the fault of the hospitality industry. You have so many big box players who don't want to own a piece of land, that just want to take fees off of gross revenue, and they don't care about the rest. And we're very different. We own the land. We, in most cases, we operate, the buildings. We build the buildings. So we really handle every aspect of it, and then we own them long term. And so the people in those buildings really become, friends of ours. And again, they're with us forever. And it's why we do kind of hospitality very, very differently. But 2019 was an amazing year. Golf, hotels, commercial buildings, retail, residential. Our winery was off the charts. And obviously COVID throws a monkey wrench into things. We have an unbelievable hotel in Waikiki. You both know very well Waikiki, Hawaii. Yeah. And guess what? You're not allowed to have visitors there until right now. The governor just moved it back to September 1st, and I don't blame anybody for doing that. I mean, there's a pandemic that's rocked this world in ways that no one can quite fathom. In fact, I had recently had a friend that passed away from it. Somebody that was my age. It's truly horrible the way this kind of virus has rocked the world, and states have to react differently, and it's hurt a lot of businesses across the board. Now, we're very, very fortunate that we're a company that believes in having very little debt. Because we're just a mature company. When you first get into development, guess what? You need a lot of debt. Otherwise, you're just never going to make it, and you're never going to, you have to have leverage, and you have to use leverage. And Robert, you've probably talked about this subject better than anybody in the world. We're at a different point where we believe in having very little leverage, but that's because we have a lot of properties and tremendous cash flow.
May I interrupt something? Because please. I just want to get into what I saw. I grew up in Hawaii, like you said, and this guy named Obama is from Hawaii. All right. And I'm not going to say anything more than that, but he's a Democrat. And I've seen his house, because when he was not there, my friend managed the property, and I got to go and say, well, this is how the president of the United States lives. And I've also been inside your home in Trump Tower. There's a difference. And I've also been, because of you, went to your wedding at Mar-a-Lago. There's a difference. And I wish people could see the difference between the Trump residences. Not that that's the, but I immediately, because I understand real estate, you guys are financing that because it's commercial property. Obama is residential. The numbers skew, everything skews. So anyway, that's really what there was the insights I gained. And, Mar-a-Lago, I remember it was your wedding. I mean, those bloody shrimps look like lobsters. I mean, I've never seen such big shrimp in my life, and I'm an eataholic. But anyway, that's really what I want to share about the Trump family.
But Robert, we do a very good job. We do a very good job running those properties, and as you said, they're commercial properties. Sometimes it's interesting how some of these politicians buy $20 million houses about 3 days after they come out of politics. But I digress.
Wait, Eric, we got to take a break. But Obama bought 3. But he bought 3 residences. They were not commercial properties. And really, that's the difference that is kind of an insight I have, is having the honor to hang out with you guys. So when we come back, we'll be going more into what it's like to be a Trump, and, Kim said it is the best word. They treat everybody with respect. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. You can listen to the Rich Dad Radio program anytime, anywhere on iTunes or Android and YouTube. And please us a review whenever you listen to it. And because we're an education company, we don't sell any kind of product and all this stuff. All we sell is financial education. And you can listen to this podcast at richdadradio.com, because as educators, we all know if you listen to something again, or you read something again, or you do something again, you'll learn twice as much. So if you would like to learn more about this very important program, go to richdadradio.com. And our guest today is a longtime friend. We've watched him grow up. I don't know. Anyway, but it's the Trumps, Eric Trump and the Trump family, the Trump business. And Kim and I, for 8 years, had the privilege and honor of actually hanging out with him. I mean, Eric, Don, and I have spent time on the most beautiful beaches in Hawaii, but there was no water, no shelter, no toilets, no cooks, nothing. And you get to know a guy after three days of stinky stuff, you know, that these guys are not wimps. Don and Eric are not wimps. They're really the best young men. And Kim got to know the staff. I mean, they're just the most respectful people. Every time you walked in, we could walk into the Donald's office, and he was always respectful. So when we see him attacked on the show, in politics, I go a little crazy, because it brings back memories of my dad, who was a Democrat, shift to Republican. He ran for lieutenant governor of Hawaii, and 3 months later, my mother was dead. It is such a nasty game. So I take it personally when I see my friends and family and attacked by the media. Any comments, Kim?
Well, I like what you said in the first part of the show, how you were raised and how your mom's side of the family really wanted to teach you the values of hard work and not having the privilege of money and all of that. That really did. I would love every parent to hear this show and hear you say that, because I think it's so important. And I just wanted to follow up. Yeah, go ahead.
The thing I want to say, I didn't really know these guys, and we're in Hawaii, and we're in the car together, and Don and Eric are in the car. We're driving to the helicopter pad so we can go to this deserted island with nothing, and they're texting their sister, and I go, "What are you guys doing?" Well, so Don Jr. says, "Well, she can't cook." So Don and Eric were texting Ivanka recipes because she had a new boyfriend. I don't know if it's Jared, but she had a new boyfriend.
Jared. No, it was Jared. Yeah, it was Jared.
I said, "You guys can cook too?" He said, "Oh yeah." He said, "Our mother and our granddad, we were not spoiled. We did." I remember exactly what you said to me. My parents had servants. We did not. Is that correct, Eric?
Yeah, no, that's correct. I mean, listen, we obviously guys lived a very privileged life. We just, my parents were smart enough to, and we never ran away from that. I mean, we always had a warm house and a warm roof over the head, and we always, we lived, unbelievably beautiful lives. My parents were smart enough to also show us kind of the flip side to that again. And it's not that my grandparents in communist Czechoslovakia didn't have wonderful lives. In fact, I could probably make the argument, guys, sometimes maybe they live more wonderful lives and happier lives than many of the very wealthy, miserable people that you see that often run around, right? And Robert and Kim, you certainly know plenty of them, and there's plenty who are incredible people, right? But our parents wanted to show us kind of both sides of that equation, and that's why we spent a lot of time in Czechoslovakia back in the days, before the wall fell, and very, very different times. It's you weren't eating fruit every single day. You didn't have the luxury of having iPads and movies. You went outside and you built up a little fire, or you went and played in the woods and built a slingshot, or did whatever you did. You made up games for yourself to play because you didn't have Xbox and you didn't have iPhones and you didn't have iPads. And but my parents were very, very smart, so we saw both sides of the coin, and I think that's really one of the things that served me incredibly well in life. We were sheltered in a certain way, but we were spoiled in a certain way. Clearly, we went to the best schools, but we we got to see the opposite side of the coin, and that very much grounded us. We saw how real people lived in countries that faced hardship with not a lot of means, and that, you know what, those people are incredible people, and they're happy people, and they love life, and they love family, and it was an unbelievable balance that they were able to strike. And I think that's probably very similar to the very life you lived, Robert.
Well, the other thing, but the proof of the parents is in the children, and I see some really rotten kids these days. But so I'm going to give one more story I remember. It was you and I and Don were upstate New York, and I don't know where the heck we were, but it was remote, and you guys drive into this little delicatessen owned by Hispanics, and you and Don were the most respectful. I mean, far beyond me. And I watched that, and it was humbling. And I picked up.
Well, Robert, part of
what's that?
Part of having that Czech mother, she was tough. I mean, she was tough, and you crossed her, or you weren't polite, and you didn't open a door, or you didn't respect an elder, or guess what? I would argue that some of the behavior back then would be child abuse today, but it was great, and it was great for us, and our pants were down and our butts were black and blue, and you know what, we deserved it. And I thank God every single day that she was a tough cookie, and she was amazing, and she was elegant, and she was beautiful, and she was smart. And you treated her with respect, and you ate the food on your plate, and you didn't waste food, and again, you opened doors, and you said please and thank you. And by the way, if you crossed Ivana, if you crossed my mom, I mean, it was you were in serious trouble, and I think that's why. I mean, we had, between her and my father, we had unbelievable role models in our lives, and people that expected you to work hard and achieve, and didn't spoil us, and didn't give us hundreds and hundreds of dollars in allowance every single week to do absolutely nothing and spend it on bad habits that ultimately probably took down a lot of people that, I know, people who were friends of mine. I mean, it's one of the reasons we never fell into drinking and drugs, because of that. We went out and we worked for the money that we had, and guess what? We didn't want to spend that on unhealthy novelties, and I respect them tremendously for the way they brought us up.
And can I say one more thing
Eric,
that happened?
in the first section, we were talking about how you look at business from what's going on today, because I know our listeners are really interested in hearing your point of view of what you see today and what you see coming in the future. Could you kind of share your mindset with that?
Sure, yeah. So I started saying, 2019 was an amazing year for us. Listen, 2020 is just, the whole world was dealt a set of cards. And so certain businesses that we have are off the charts. We have a great winery. We're the largest winery on the East Coast of the United States. And, it's funny, your wholesale business, which largely caters to restaurants, obviously that falls to almost nothing, because, every restaurant in the country is shut, right? But yet, you have to figure out in life sometimes how to retool very quickly. And so guess what? We went to a e-commerce model, and our e-commerce went to, it's probably up 500% this year, really, selling wine online, because people are home, people are cooking at home, people are eating at home. And we were able to retool our business in a couple of days. And quite frankly, the margin actually off of e-com is substantially better than going through, 3 different distributors and this and that. And it was actually kind of a net positive. Golf was a great positive for us, because guess what? It was kind of the last to close, and it was the first to open, and it was outside, and it was considered safe. And so, our golf business this year is off the charts. On the flip side, naturally we have city hotels, all over the country, that are generally closed just because of, social distancing, and people aren't traveling, and airline lift is at, 10% of what it was in February. And now that's coming back very strong, and we're starting to see the numbers really pick up. And I think we're going to have a great kind of, third quarter, fourth quarter. And I think next year is going to be, back to normal, or back to beyond normal, unless something silly happens where, Democrats start raising taxes and, try and kill the economy. But listen, the whole world had to learn how to adapt, and everybody had to change their business philosophies. And again, when you're told, in the case of Las Vegas, guess what? You have 24 hours to close a 1,200-room hotel. That certainly hurts. at the same time, we always had a philosophy as a family, which was, always maintain that umbrella for a rainy day. And we had that umbrella, and we've always maintained low leverage, and we've been very, very financially prudent, and we were smart, and we reacted quickly, and we did the right thing. And so 2020 will not be the year I want to remember the most by any means, at least not the first half of 2020. At the same time, we're incredibly blessed to have a strong company. We're incredibly blessed to have incredible cash flow, low leverage, unbelievable people, the best assets, and sometimes you have to roll with the punches.
I think what Kim was impressed at, you had 24 hours to shut a 1,200-room hotel.
And we had this problem all over, where you get a call from some state official, some governor, some mayor, and congratulations, Trump, you have 24 hours to shut a 82 room hotel in Las Vegas. And it's like, well, what about the many guests that are staying there? Well, they're going to have to check out. And okay, what about, 700 people person team that you have? Well, we're not really sure what to tell you. And obviously states had to do that. States had to do that to get in front of the virus, and the federal government had to issue a lot of mandates. But for the business community, I'm sure so many of the people listening on the phone, who all face their own challenges, it wasn't an easy thing. And, in many cases, what you'd have is a governor of a state saying you have to close, and then you'd have a mayor of a respective town saying, no, you have to stay open. And, and that's no fault of anybody, to tell you the truth. You were dealing with an unprecedented situation that was incredibly difficult. And I think the business community learned a lot. I think the business community through this whole thing has become more tech savvy. All of a sudden, you weren't doing 10 in-person meetings a day, and you were doing a lot of Zoom calls. There might be things that actually come out of COVID long-term, as much pain and cost as it's really hit everybody with. There are probably things long-term that has taught everybody. Probably the need for that rainy day fund, probably the need to always, maintain reserves where you can, and be especially financially prudent, because people saw the world turn from the greatest economy in the world with absolutely no waves or dark clouds on the horizon on any front, to all of a sudden a virus coming from another country unexpectedly that caused really a 180 in terms of the way people operate. But again, long term, I think it's made people in certain ways more efficient. It's made them less reliant on certain things. I think it's taught the business community a tremendous deal.
So in closing, you can get political here, because anything you want to say, you can trash the Democrats. I don't really care. We're not political here. But any challenges or anything you would like to talk about, probably from your father's point of view?
Yeah. What do people need to know, Eric?
No, listen, I think I think you can turn on the TV and what surprised me, maybe maybe I'll get political for a second, but and I'll try to stay away from it. But I have to tell you that we came out of a world that was fairly cutthroat, which is kind of the business world, and nothing can compare. Nothing can prepare you for what kind of these savages in Washington D.C. Act like, speak like, work like. I mean, it's just. The evilness sometimes that exists in that city is unlike anything I've ever seen before. And, Robert, in business, it seems like you can have two people who are on totally opposite ends of the spectrum. Let's take, a Chuck Schumer and let's take a Ted Cruz, right? They might be on totally opposite ends of the spectrum, but in New York City or in Arizona or anywhere else, those two could be best friends because, they want to create a great company and they want to create the next great widget. And they might have different political, philosophical, right? But they're just... they're trying to create a goal of creating a great company or a great product. In government, it's very different, right? Power tends to corrupt politicians. And you see these politicians who have been in Congress for 36 years, 40 years. They've never had a job in their life. All they care about is having that beautiful white marble office overlooking Pennsylvania Avenue. And, when you see some of these proposals, some of the proposals in Washington, D.C. don't benefit the American people. And you see this lack of law and order. You see this, let's go defund the police, some of the bravest men and women in the world. Let's, take everybody's taxes. Let's raise everybody's taxes by 85%. I mean, Biden's proposal literally increases people's taxes by 82%. every business in this country will be bankrupted. Every small business in this country will be bankrupted. People will be taking home tens of thousands of dollars less every year for the same amount of work, and our economy will come to a screeching halt. And this is a guy who's been in Washington for 40 plus years. I think it's 48 years between being in the Senate and vice president and everything else. And, he's never had to balance a checkbook. He's never had to sign the front of a check. He's always signed the back of a check. He's never signed the front of the check. He's never had the struggles, Robert and Kim, that you guys have had, or, the sleepless nights that we've all had before, right? It's not what they do. They show up.
Eric, let me interrupt you. Did you go to the Ukraine and did your father say they should pay you money like Biden did with his son?
No, I didn't. And by the way, if I took one quarter from any foreign government, guess what? I'd be in jail. And then you have, Hunter Biden getting, paid millions of dollars to sit on boards of small energy companies. I mean, it's really unbelievable. He was getting paid $600,000 a year to sit on a board of a small energy company. If you look at the board members of ExxonMobil, one of the largest, energy companies in the world, the average board member gets paid $300,000. But Hunter Biden, who got kicked out of the Navy, certainly had lots of problems with a small little energy company in Ukraine that no one's ever heard of, was getting paid $600,000. I mean, why does any person with a rational mind think that that's happening? And there's only one reason, and everybody knows exactly what it is. Or flying over to China on Air Force Two with his father and taking $1.5 billion out of the country. I mean, we know some of the greatest investors in the world, the heads of, BlackRock and this and that. They can't get 2 cents out of China. Yet Hunter Biden's able to fly over there for a 30-minute meeting and take home $1.5 billion, right? It's the epitome of corruption. If we did that on our end to the magnitude of 1/4, we'd be in jail for the rest of our lives. Now, the reason my father got into this, politics was to save this country. Certainly not from a financial benefit, and believe me, it's cost him billions of dollars. Meaning politics has cost him billions and billions of dollars in terms of, lost revenue, lost opportunity, lost other things. And he doesn't care because he's doing the right thing, and he doesn't frankly need it. But then you see, so many other people who come out of politics, and guess what? They're worth $50 million. Where did that money come from? If they're getting a government salary of $140,000 a year or whatever, how do you buy the house in Martha's Vineyard and the house in Hawaii and the house in Washington D.C.? How do you buy all these properties that aren't revenue producing, that don't throw off any cash flow? And people really need to start asking that question, because it's Washington's a very interesting place, and there's tremendous corruption. I think my father's greatest legacy will hopefully be exposing much of that, and frankly, the dishonesty of the media, but to the entire world.
Yeah, I would love to see that, Eric. I would love to see that exposed. I would love that. That's
Eric,
my dream.
We were out of time. I thank you
We're
for your
working on it,
time.
Kim, I promise you.
Thank you. Let me know if I can help.
Eric,
the swamp is deep, and there's lots of alligators, but he's working on it.
Eric, I'm glad we ended on the different offspring. You have Hunter Biden, and you have Eric Trump and Don Jr. and Ivanka. The difference is how you make your money. So, Mr. Eric Trump, it is an honor to get to know you and your family, and keep up the good fight. Any final words, Kim?
I appreciate all you're doing, Eric. And again, you have our support. And if that truly, what you just said there at the end of exposing and bringing the truth to what's happening is really, I would jump on that fight all day long. So if I can be of any assistance, you reach out, please.
Eric, is Eric still? Okay. Anyway, we want to thank Eric. We got cut off early, but I tell you what, if you really want to see the difference in parents, just look at Hunter Biden and Don Jr., Eric Trump, and Ivanka Trump. Thank you very much. So we lost Eric Trump right there, but I think it was a fantastic show. I think you get the point. We're not political, but we're just looking at the different offspring, and you can see, how the Biden kids make their money and the Trump kids make their money. It's a little bit different. And any final words there, Kim?
Well, Eric said so many important things, and one of the couple things that he said is that, with this whole COVID thing, that he sees that there's going to be positives out of it, the reserves, rainy day funds, technology. I love that. But the other thing that he said, which I thought was really important, is for any entrepreneur, is when this struck, like in Vegas, it was the resiliency of how do we do things differently. Like the winery, he talked about, they went right to e-commerce and they're doing great. I look at the Rich Dad Company and, we've all been working from home and we got this office building. And so we're like, well, what can we do with the office building if we don't need to be here all the time? And well, we can turn it into a warehouse for our products. So it's like that resiliency. How do you think differently? And that's what makes him and the whole Trump family so successful, I think. That plus the upbringing and really the strong values that they have.
So I'll just end with this, is that, like I said, I've spent so many hours and days with them on this beautiful, the most beautiful beaches in the world. I've seen a lot of beautiful beaches. No toilets, no cook, no chef, no nothing, no showers. And where they got this fire, we're stinky, we're getting to know it. And that is Don Jr. and Eric. And at that time, the hottie of the day was Paris Hilton. So I wanted to know the dirt because Paris Hilton and Don Jr. and Ivanka and all that, they all run around together. So I remember asking those two boys, young men at the time, I said, tell me, what do you know about Paris Hilton? In other words, I was asking for the dirt. And both of them looked up at me and they said, I'm sorry, we don't know you well enough yet.
Yet. Well enough.
They
don't know you well enough yet. Yeah.
Yeah, but they don't gossip.
Yeah.
I'm going, who are these guys? Do you know what I mean? The character that is instilled in them is what their father and mother did and their grandparents. So I really think if there's a lesson to be learned here, politics is a nasty game. I wouldn't believe a thing you see on the press, but just look at the young people coming out of the families. So with that, I want to thank you all for listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show, and go out there and become people with better character. We can all do that. Thank you very much.